Hey, you have made it to closing day. Congratulations. This is so exciting. So, what happens on closing day? Well, one of the biggest questions that we get, or the most common questions, is do I have to move out on closing day? Do I have to actually be out of the property? Yes, you have to be out. Unless there's some other agreement for closing day where you get to stay, you have to be out, and not just on closing day, but before the closing time. So, if you remember when we talked about cash closings, basically you want to know, or everybody's going to want to know, that you're out the day before that closing. Or they're going to want to know that you're out by at least 3 o'clock that day so that the buyers can go do their final walkthrough and they can say that everything went well, and then your proceeds can be sent to you. So, the word of the wise is to be out of the property if you can, even the day before. It's really stressful to be worrying about closing on the day of, because the buyers are going to have a walkthrough scheduled. And typically that walkthrough will happen sometime between the hours of 9 a.m., 8 or 8 a.m., and 3 or 4. And if you're not out, then what they're going to do is they're going to make a big stink about the fact that you're still at the property when they go do their final walkthrough. This is something that really throws off buyers. They don't like it, and it can be an added stress of the day. So, if you can do it at any cost, to like your convenience, right? To get out of the property by the closing day, and before the closing time, that is perfect. And the buyers are also going to be expecting generally that the property will be in broom clean condition, which means that you won't be leaving trash around. It's different than leaving a rental. Sometimes you can get a little bit more forgiveness when you like leave certain things back behind when you've rented a property. But when you're selling, the buyers are really going to be expecting the property be swept clean and that there's no garbage, even up at the top of the street. And we recommend that you pretty much, follow that order so that you can have a smooth closing day. The buyers will be going to the property and they need to see that after all of the furniture is gone and everything's removed from the walls, that everything looks like it did during the home inspection, and that any repairs that were agreed upon were made and completed. So, the buyers can't really do that if you're busy there with a moving truck and you've got a lot of people going in and out. It just doesn't really work. So, getting out is important. Now, the buyers, if they have a mortgage, what they will be doing is going to a closing location after the walkthrough, and they will be signing their loan docs for the closing. And you will just be waiting to hear from your attorney to know that closing has started, that it's completed, and that the wire or your check has been mailed, and that everything is good to go. But let's backtrack a little bit and let's talk about what happens if there is a final walkthrough problem. So, typically, and I'd say 50% of the time, there can be a walkthrough problem. Walkthrough problems can consist of something being at the property that wasn't there during the inspection, that requires repair or correction, that literally did not exist at the time of the inspection. So the worst case scenarios that we have seen is being like water infiltrating into the basement because the closing day is on a day of heavy rain and that wasn't seen during the inspection. Other things can be that the repairs that were supposed to be done were done, but maybe they actually didn't fix the problem. So, really, it could be something that you either know you're going to have come up because you know that you said you did something that you didn't, or it could be that it's a surprise. And that doesn't mean that closing won't happen, but it does provide a chance for another last minute negotiation to happen. And typically, both parties do want to close. So the idea is that there's usually some resolution. The worst case scenario is that closing has to be pushed until the issue is resolved. So there is sometimes when that can happen, but generally speaking, most parties want to find a solution to actually do the closing. So what we don't prefer is that money be held in escrow so that you can solve the issue later. Ideally, the buyers will take a credit and they will just deal with the issue after closing so that you can have closure. Um, A lot of times people think the escrow option, which is basically like money from your proceeds gets held back, so that the issue can be resolved later. A lot of people think that that's the best, but to be honest, once closing's done, it is really nice if you don't have any like strings attached. So ideally, if the situation can lend itself to a credit, that would be ideal for the seller, because then you don't have to worry about the buyer moving in and having something else come up and have them now complain about more things. Even if they don't have the right to do it, they just might. So avoiding that is important. Now, let's say the walkthrough went well and that there were no problems, then the buyers are just going to go have their mortgage documents signed. And then when closing is complete, what actually causes closing to complete is the buyer's lender says, we're ready to send the loan, and the title company gets what's called funding approval. Some lenders actually don't require funding approval and they already approve the funding before the closing. That's really nice because once the buyers sign all their docs, everything is done, which is so great because we don't have to wait for someone who's sitting at their desk at the lender's office who may be on lunch to come back and look at the documents and say, I authorize funding. Our fate doesn't rest in one person's hands, right? So funding approval already in by the time the lender approves the closing and that the closing is scheduled is ideal. And once funding is approved, whether it's required or it's already done, that is when closing can be considered complete. And for our purposes, we don't usually allow buyers, unless you tell us it's okay, which we don't recommend, but we don't allow buyers to take the keys and move into the property until we know that your proceeds are on the way to you, whether that's put in the mail and dispatched or wired. So you don't actually have to receive the money because that is not really practical, but the money's on its way to you. That's really important to us for the buyers to then have access. If there's any issues with the money going to you, those keys should be held back so that the buyers don't get those until closing. Now, on closing day, you are going to want to know, like, how much money am I getting from this closing? What exactly am I taking home? So before closing actually starts, our office or your attorney's office will go over what's called the closing disclosure or the HUD with you. And that document will be basically the breakdown of the purchase price minus all of your costs. And then what's left over is your proceeds. So you will know fully well what is coming to you and how much money you can expect. Also on that day, that's when you get the deposit monies that the buyers paid up front. So that doesn't go missing or, get lost in the process. That will also come to you on closing day as well. So you will know your final figures. And remember those closing documents that we talked about, those will have in their original form, they will be in the possession of the title company. And so that portion will already be taken care of before closing. So pretty much closing day should be a breeze for you. What really matters is having the property ready to go for the final walkthrough and also having all your documents in place prior to closing. And you may just be worrying about your move or whatever it is that you're doing that day, but hopefully the stress is coming from something else other than the transaction, and that all goes smooth. So our office will be in touch with you if you do choose to work with us to let you know when closing started, that the final walkthrough went well, that it's all completed, that the closing is complete, and that the wire is on its way to you or your proceeds are on the way, and that you get a copy of all the documents that you're entitled to that have both your signature and the buyer's signature on it, so that you can see that there's at least one document, right, that shows that closing is done, that you and the buyer sign. So that is closing day, and that is the end of our course when it comes to the transaction process. And I will be posting a bonus video for things that you can consider post-closing that you may want to think about, such as updating your will, obtaining any sort of information on ways to deal with the proceeds that you received. I cannot provide financial education, but it is possible that you may want to think about what you're going to do with those proceeds after closing. Are you going to buy another property? Are you going to invest the money? How can you make the most out of that? So that's another video that I will post in the future. But for now, the course, the steps of the transaction are all complete. And you made it. You made it to closing day. Congratulations. It was such a pleasure walking through this journey with you. And I am here to assist if you have any questions. And there's also some videos that are in the course files that introduce you to our firm, a little bit more information about us and our team and how we work and how we're here to help you and how much we look forward to potentially working with you in the future. That is that, and congratulations on closing, and I look forward to seeing you in all the other videos. Talk to you soon.